Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday, April 20th, 2021. Mr. Perry here with a rundown of what we're doing on this glorious Tuesday. We're going to start looking at food chains, and we're going to start looking at food chains by having you just start off by creating them. So don't forget to do your bell ringer first, but then go ahead and pop open the assignment. That is the food chains around the world, and that's what we're going to take a look at here. I'm going to load it up myself so that we can see what we are working with here for our activities. So before we talk about food chains, which we're going to talk about food chains tomorrow, we're going to see how much we actually know about how food chains can be put together. So here's a little bit of an overview of what a food chain is. So the term food chain describes the order in which organisms depend on each other for food. So like who eats who in the long run. Every ecosystem, which is what we talked about yesterday, the living and non-living parts interacting with each other, has a food chain to it. Every creature belongs to some kind of food chain to them, some way, somehow, because they have to eat, and usually something probably eats them at some point. One of those two options have to happen. Most food chains start with organisms that make their own food, such as plants. These are what we call producers because they are producing their own food through photosynthesis using the sun's energy. We talked about that earlier in the year when we talked about how we get our energy. Plants make their own energy. They have to start the food chain. Animals have to eat in order to get our energy and our food, so we have to come afterwards. So things like animals are typically called consumers because we have to eat other living things. And then we have different levels of consumers depending on where we're at in the food chain. If you eat a plant, you're known as a primary consumer. If you ate the thing that ate the plant, you'd be a secondary consumer. And then there's tertiary, quaternary, that they use like the fancy ways of saying second and third and first there for it. But it all depends on what part of the food chain that you are in. If you take a look at the food chain at the bottom there, you'd notice that we have the grass starting off first. That's our producer. Then we have the grasshopper, which eats the grass. That would be our primary consumer. The frog would eat the grasshopper. That would be a secondary consumer. The snake would eat the frog. That would be what we call the tertiary or third consumer. And then we'd have the hawk would eat the snake, or the eagle would eat the snake. That would be the quaternary or the fourth level consumer. We would have our decomposers. They would be littered throughout the food chain because the leftovers or the things that would die would get broken apart by the decomposers and sent back to the soil for the plants to use along with the sun for extra nutrients. And then the food chain just goes through again and again and again and again. That's the basics of a food chain. Now, in this activity, what you're going to do is that you're going to travel to 3 different locations, quote unquote travel. And you're going to research different plants and animals that in there to make a food chain. So we got different directions as far as each one. You're going to be making a food chain of the forest, a food chain of the desert, and a food chain of the ocean. And then at the end, there's some questions for you to answer. So let's look at the forest and look at that as an example. So using a forest environment, you are going to research and create a food chain involving plants and animals that would live in that area. You are going to need to get pictures of your plants and animals in the food chain and make the food chain 4 links long. So the example that we had here was 5 links. So you would basically stop at the snake on this one. That's how long you need to make it. It is 4 links long. And we actually have it set up for you so you can look at it there. You're going to label your animals and plants with their names. The food chain must at least have 1 plant and 1 animal in it. You should have more probably of a certain type, depending on how we've introduced it here, but just make sure you need to have plants and animals in your food chain. The arrow always points to where the energy is going or who is doing the eating. So the left side is usually going to be the first thing. The right side is going to be the top predator, top apex type of thing going on there. So inside the boxes, you'll put your picture in the box, And then down below it, you are going to tell me the organism's name in the yellow there. And it gives a little bit of a clue as to what organism is going to be eating what when you read through that. I don't know why the font gets so weird when I put it into there. There's what it normally looks like, so it should appear like that, but it gets all weird when it's in presentation mode. But you should be able to read the little hints and clues that we leave behind. So you'll do one for a forest, do one for a desert, and do one for an ocean environment there. And there's some questions that go along with why you put things in certain areas, and general questions about the food chain there. If you have any questions, email me up. But it's to get your minds going about how you think a food chain might be constructed based off our little introduction there and assembling of our food chain. And a lot of you probably have some familiarity with this concept already, so we're seeing how much we're able to piece together there with it. So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, make sure that you turn it in. Tomorrow we'll go in depth about all the different parts of a food chain. We'll look at how to turn that into a food web, and we'll look at how to convert that into an energy pyramid tomorrow. So that's what we'll look forward to tomorrow. Otherwise, hope you're doing well, staying safe, and if you have any questions, email me. Otherwise, I will see you later. Bye.